Hi all, Hef here from Epic Rides and Tours, Sidecar Adventures. Those of you who've watched any of our videos or read our social media posts will know that we have two Ural sidecar combinations, Swampy and Dusty. And Swampy, some may remember, it has a large battery in the boot. It's actually a 115 amp hour battery, and the major purpose of that is to operate the 2045 kilogram winch that's on the front of the sidecar. We have used it, not in real anger, but it's done a very good job on a couple of times. Anyway, I've decided to fit a dual battery system. Now, there's going to be a lot of motorcyclists up there jumping up like, please, you can't do that. But we can. Urals are fitted with a motor car style alternator, which chucks out about 40 amps, which is probably about 4 times as much as your average motorcycle alternator, which is buried in the sump. So, crossing fingers, this should work. Rightio. So, we're actually in the garage, and I'm standing by Swampy because I am going to use all that kit over there to create a dual battery system. Urals have a car-like alternator, which is vastly different from almost every other bike on the planet, I think. If you think I'm wrong or you know something better, stick it in the comments and I'll gladly read it and say thank you for the info. But this chucks out about 40 amps top whack, so it should be more than capable of charging the 115 amp hour battery in the boot. So how are we going to go about this? Well, here we go. We've got a couple of items in here. This is an isolator. It's a semiconductor type isolator. What it does is when battery volts for the vehicle, i.e. the bike, are below a certain amount, it will disconnect the auxiliary battery from the circuit. Gives the bike enough time to charge up the vehicle battery for starting purposes, because it's awful embarrassing shoving the bike down the road trying to get up to a high enough speed to bump start it. So once it finishes charging the vehicle battery, it then starts charging the big bugger in the boot. So let's get started. Take 3. Okay, when I first got Swampy, the wiring for the winch was dubious. I won't go any further. The guy I bought it off had invoices from the auto electrician who had installed it, and I've no way do I believe that they were forged. So I did a wee bit of research, and the remote control for the winch comes in 2 pieces. This part, which is the receive, this part, which is the relay. Now the relay you can't see too well from here. there's positive and negative directly from the battery to the top two terminals, and then down the bottom there's a negative, positive and a negative that go to the winch. Here is the receiver, which when you hit the right button on the remote control operates that relay and sends positive and neutral, positive and negative down the right lines to your winch. It is very important to get the wiring right, and this is the yellow, comes from the receiver up to this contact. It's a spade terminal. All of the terminals on the remote control I got were ring type, so I had to replace them with spade terminals. You've got two negatives, one from the negative in from the battery and the other one comes up from the receiver, and that's where they go. And then you've got white from the receiver to this terminal, and last of all you have blue. Now how about that? It doesn't go anywhere. It's actually the antenna for the wireless remote receiver. How about that? Amazing technology. Now I'm going to see if it works, and I'll come back in a wee while to let you know. So for a princely sum of around about 20 bucks, I got this and this. That's a handy little bit of kit, I think, and the receiver that I pointed out with all the little coloured lines, wires. Righty tighty, so let's have a go. Does it go out? Friggin' heck, yes, you flipping beauty. Now does it go in? Oh, does it ever? Oh, I am so happy. Okay, so taking the kit apart, this is the actual voltage sensitive relay, which effectively isolates the auxiliary battery until the vehicle's alternator has charged the vehicle battery. In this case it's a bike. It shouldn't take long because the battery that's in Swampy is about 25 amp hours. I've seen other Urals with 30 or 40 amp hour batteries, but yeah, who's counting? Anyway, here's the back, and you've got two terminals in here plus a wire. Now that wire is to be the ground for this side of the relay, which is connected, you see the red dot, it's connected to the vehicle battery. So you bring in some red cable and connect that here, and that goes down to earth, which basically completes the circuit for the vehicle battery, the one that you're going to use to start your motorbike with. So there's a back for it. Once you've done what you need to, you can screw that together. There's a whole load of screws available with the kit. There's some extra terminals. There's 3 of that type of terminal, and there's even a little loop type terminal which will fit on the end of this, so just crimp it on. Did I show those? Yes. Righty-ho, so all this kit came with the installation kit. There's one thing that is missing. So if you do this, you're going to need the split tubing, the old corrugated stuff, okay, because the positive cable is going to have to travel a couple of meters from the vehicle battery to the relay. I'm going to fit the relay right next to the auxiliary battery in the boot. These things are traditionally put under the bonnet of your four-wheel drive, but we're not going to have the luxury of having two batteries side by side, so I shall be back and show you how I did it. Right, here's the battery, in case you didn't know what one looks like. And before you start doing anything on a vehicle with that has anything to do with the battery, you remove the negative terminal first. Unless you've got a really ancient vehicle that has a positive earth, you remove the negative terminal first, because that's, you see, I can put something metal between the frame and the negative terminal, and there's no big booms or spitting fire, etc, etc. That's because the negative lead goes down to, in this case, the back of the gearbox, which is electrically connected to the frame. So everything that is connected to here is also connected to here and here. Now if I go over the other side of the bike, as things are, and I start to remove connectors to the positive terminal, if I slip and this screwdriver causes a connection between the positive terminal and the frame or anything else metal on the bike, like the engine, whatever, we stand to have a nasty sort of kaboom. So first thing, before you start working on any battery, take this one off. Okay, I've removed the negative from the battery, and there's a few broken bits there. I think I'll re-terminate that after I finish this job. So you'll notice there is still a wire connected to the negative terminal of the battery, but that is not connecting to anywhere on the frame or engine or even the gearbox, which this one is. So if I touch down between the positive terminal and the framework of the engine or engine, there's not going to be any kaboom. Okay, so I also think my best option while doing this for safety and convenience is to remove the seat, because the battery comes up through a gap here under the seat. There's, to take the seat off, there's a 17mm nut where my hand, the tips of my fingers are presently, and then this lifts slightly up, slightly forwards and away. Then there's a plate to remove underneath that, but you'll see as I go. Now, a good reason for disconnecting the negative at this time is because I'm going to have this thing right in front of the battery and under the seat, and yeah, it's easy to see, isn't it, how I could possibly have a short circuit somewhere. So I'm just going to move the camera out of my way so that I can do this without yeah, without whatever. Okie dokie. Well, it takes about 5,000 turns of the nut. For some reason it's a very long bolt and a incredibly fine thread. So once you get to a certain stage, it's really not worth using the ratchet. And just turn the extension bar here, and of course the nut and the socket and nut with it. There we go. Finally. Not sure if I mentioned it, but by the way, that's a 17mm nut. Now, lob your tools and bits that you need into the magnetic tray. Now, just lift that a wee bit up, and then the tabs here and here can be disconnected from these. And yeah, it's a rather simple process, but you have to fight a bit. Right, so next thing, we have this plate, and at least 4 of those screws, might be 5, I can't remember now because it was months ago that I last did this, and I'm lucky to remember the last 5 minutes, let alone 5 months. Okie dokie, so remove those screws. They're Allen head bolts. If you've got them in yours, you know they're factory. If not, you know someone's been playing games. Anyway, I'm diving in. Okay, where my left index finger is pointing, that bolt is slightly different to the others, which screw into already threaded holes in the framework. This one is attached to a bracket which holds the CDI pack for the ignition. So I've got a 14mm ring spanner under there, and there we go. Just a couple of quick turns with the ratchet. She's loose enough just to use your fingers. That's it. Just try not to drop the nut into the works. Attach it to the bolt that it came from, and then you can lift this to one side. There's a couple of relays under there, but just leave that as so. Righty, that gives you some space to disconnect everything from the positive side, and I'm going to have to find a longer or second screw at least to put the terminal end of this cable. So it's got to fit like so or like so. I hope you can see that from over there. If you can't, well, stuff it. Your problem, not mine. No, it's all right. It'll all come clear in the end. So I'll go ahead and remove those positive leads, and then I'll figure out a way to run the cable, the best way to run it so that there's less likelihood of damage. Right, now I'll bring the camera in a bit closer. You can see this long bolt has a nut and washer at this end which I've removed, and that basically releases the battery from these two clamps. If you've seen my installing the battery video from earlier on back in 2023, you'll know all about that. So I've just dropped one of the brackets down just under the bike. Anyway, once you've got that, you have to try to get these out of the way, and then you can lift the battery up. Don't know if you can see that at all well, but there's a bit of fur on that. Now, when I put it all back together a couple of months ago, I made sure there was absolutely no fur on there whatsoever. So there's a possibility there of a bung battery. So I might have to go and get one and hold it on trickle charge until this one decides it's time to give up the ghost. I mean, back in the old days, they used to tell us to put grease or Vaso on the terminals, but I've also been told don't do that. So what the hell. Anyway, right, we've got the battery fully disconnected, and I'm going to take it out just for the sake of it. Gives me a bit more room to maneuver. Among other things, I suffer from something I call clutterphobia. If I can't turn round without banging into something or causing a bloody avalanche, I'll get rather testy. I'm sure most of the people watching this will understand. Rightio. I'm sure I didn't have to do this before, but okay. This threaded doohickey connects here, and also obviously forms part of the attachment to the sidecar. So every time I'm trying to lift this up, there's absolutely no way that I can get it up past this or these corners. So God knows how I did it last time. It went in easy enough. I'm sure I didn't have to take this off, but yeah, here we go. So I've had a good think about this job before I started it, and at least 3 times I've had to rethink it. However, I was planning on fitting the positive lead to the top of this terminal, or to the side of it. I've got a better idea, because I've just remembered, of course, as I've said in a previous video, if you haven't seen it, have a look, about the battery. There's a second set of terminals. So ignore the fact that this is a black cable for the moment. It's just easier for me to maneuver than the 12 feet of positive cable I've got. Now there we go. I should be able to fit that in. I'll put a plain washer and a spring washer on it. Yep, that's the best way round, and that will save a whole load of hassle. Yeah. Okie dokie. So I think there's about 6 meters of cable in this kit. It will have to be cut at some stage after I've put in this bit, which will be the longest stretch from the battery to the isolator, from the vehicle battery to the isolator, and then there's another shorter bit from the isolator to the auxiliary battery. I'll do the longest run first. I don't think it's really necessary to be that careful at the moment, but let's do it right. And here we have a blind grommet, which I've cut an X shape into across, so that we can get the end of the cable at the boot end and just slot it through like that. Now, the advantage of having the X is pretty obvious, I think. Okay, and the blind grommet that I have cut will be going through this hole that I've just cut. If you've not done any hole cutting with metal, I suppose there might be a few people, you need to lubricate them. So any kind of thin oil, penetrating oil of various types, just keep squirting it on the hole cutter to prevent it basically wearing out in next to no time, because they're a wee bit expensive. Okay, so this tiny little screw came with my battery, but I only had 3 of them, and I wanted to use another screw, because I need one for the negative side of the battery, I need one for the positive side of the battery, and I only actually have one of these. It all worked until I did this. Now I couldn't find anything like this screw. I wasn't worried about looking for a Phillips head, straight blade, Allen key head, didn't matter. It's the length of it that is the problem. I tried every bloody hardware store in town. So what I did was I got a bolt with the same thread and cut it down to length with an angle grinder. Now there was a limit as to how I could do that, keeping the head properly gripped while I shaved off the bottom 30 yards, more like 60% of the thread. So I couldn't get it much shorter than it is, so what I've done is I've actually made a post. So the idea, I hope you can see under there, there's a nut. So I put the nut on the end of, first off I put a washer on the screw, then I put the lug, the terminal, onto the screw, and then I put a nut on and just wound it on a couple of turns. Then I screwed the screw and it's locked in really nicely. Okay, the battery's not currently fitted properly, not restrained, not strapped in, etc. But yeah, at the moment I'm just measuring things up. Now if I get, at some time I get another vehicle battery, which is likely to happen, it may not be the type that I've got here with 4 posts or post holes, so I'm going to have to leave a bit of slack here. So yeah, I've just got to figure out how to tie that in place with cable ties and make sure that I do have extra length to cope with a different sort of battery. So there you go, the post I've made. Set the nut there, there's the washer on the other side of the terminal, and the bolt, which just happens to be a combination flat blade or Phillips, and as you screw it in, the nut travels up the screw until it's as tight as. Now I've also messed around a wee bit, doing some fine adjustments with a foil to make sure that the screw itself screws all the way into the the hole for it on the battery. So yeah, first time I've tried doing that, first time I've even thought of it, but it seems to work very well. I'll just keep an eye on it, and over the weeks, months and years I'll keep my eye out for a screw that actually might fit without modification. Rightio, this protective outer layer, corrugated split tubing. You see that it opens there for those who've not seen it before. There's a fairly long bit of cable to run through this tubing, so I've got a pair of long nose pliers, and I placed the terminal at one end at night so that it pokes out through the split in the tube. Grab hold of it with the long nose pliers and you can pull it through. It's dead easy. Yeah, so once you've done that, of course, you can run the thing and tie it into place, and yeah, Robert's your mother's brother. And once you've put the corrugated tubing called Copex, where I come from, once you've put that on each end, or through the wire on each end, leave 2 or 3 centimeters clear, so it's actually easier to fit the terminals to where they got to go. And there we go, here's our negative from the battery to ground. Now the guy who had this bike before me made sure that this battery was not going to come out of here. There's a nice strong steel bar there holding everything in place, and I've chosen a fixing bolt at this end to ground out, and I've got a couple of, they're called Watsits, that stick to the side of the boot down here, and to the battery box, just to keep the whole thing from flapping in whatever breeze might exist in the boot. Just keep it nice and tidy. I'll just snip off the ends now with a pair of side cutters and move on to the next stage. So, as a way of seating the isolator, I'm going to put it on a block of wood, which I've just cut up and given it a bit of a spray paint. Once that's dry, I can use it to put the isolating switch on this bit of the gubbins, and first I'll screw it into the boot, and then I can choose a safe place to bring the main positive cable in from the starter battery. Cut a hole in the side of the boot and put a blind grommet in there, just the same as I did with the spot lamps on Dusty, if you saw that video. If you didn't, go and have a look at it. I reckon she looks smick. Did a bit of shopping yesterday. Now I've got a pack of these, and different sizes and different colours. Sort of a rubbery pad. Yes, these have got to be the right thing to help vibration dampen. So I'll get a couple of different sizes and stick them onto the block of wood that I've got here, that I'll be mounting the isolator on, and use these to pad out leave a gap between the isolator and the wood, take up some of the vibrations, and yeah, maybe assist in a bit of cooling, you know, leaving a little air gap behind. Right, so here we are. I haven't bolted anything in place yet. I'm just making sure everything fits. Now the battery isolator is just hanging there on the screws that I've put through for its suspension, and here is the neutral wire, the negative or ground wire from the isolator itself. I've taken off that much excess wire, and I've stripped back the end, ready to take the crimp ring terminal, which will go onto one of these screws because they are connected to the metal of the sidecar and therefore they are grounded. Okay, negative earth on this vehicle, as in most of those that have been produced since the 50s and 60s. Anyway, enough chat, let's get on with it. So there we go, we've got those 4 rubber pads adhering to the nicely painted block of decking wood. Just an old scrap. Well, why spend lots of money, eh, when you can make it look good without spending lots of money? So we'll leave them on for about an hour, and then I'll put a sharp object through the holes on this side and puncture through these, and then we can fit the whole thing to the side of the sidecar. Now, because the sidecar electrics are perfectly grounded, I'm just trying to think of the right term here, so we've got power to items on the sidecar, such as a 12-volt power supply, the old cigarette lighter job. The bodywork of the sidecar is properly grounded, so the ground cable for the auxiliary battery and the ground cable for the isolator can both go to one of the bolts which will be holding this block of wood and the isolator to the side of the boot where they're going to be fitted. Oh God, Heffy, you need another beer or something, you. Anyway, yeah, that's the idea. I will of course test that to make sure that we do have a good earth, otherwise I'll drill a hole and create a new one direct to the bodywork rather than relying on this bolt. But it should work. It should work because the bolt will be connected to the outside and running through to the inside. Once it's all tightened up, it will make a good ground point.